The theory of rasa is one that dates back to the writing of the Natyasastra, so somewhere between 500 BCE and 500 CE, though where in that timeline specifically it was written is up for debate, due to the text being lost and then rediscovered over the years. If the text is to be believed, it describes the act of performance being handed down to humans by the gods, and then Bharata Muni writing the words of the gods. Even disregarding the supposedly mythological origins, it is still clear that this is a text that has been instrumental to the aesthetics of Indian performance, in theater, dance, and music, which, given the traditions of Indian theater, makes a lot of sense with how interconnected these three disciplines are. The information inside of the Natyasastra is still actively used in Indian performance today. One of the central concepts of the book is the idea of rasa, which we will get into more specific definitions of later on. Rasa is so intrinsic to the concept of the Natyasastra and the concepts of Sanskrit dramas that there isn't a proper definition of it in English. The idea is that it is this uniquely Indian concept. However, throughout this video, you'll see that there is a sort of interconnectedness between rasa and other theories. Part of the reason that there is no specific definition of rasa in Western tongues is the idea that rasa is an idea that is entirely separate from Western theatrical tradition, which, as I said, is not the case. When defining rasa, it is instead necessary to get into the weeds of subcategories to fully pick through what the different aspects of it truly mean. It is also necessary to look at Sanskrit dramas themselves and the language used therein to better inform our modern discussions on rasa. Throughout this video, we will be examining rasa and bhava, as well as Aristotle's catharsis theory, as well as the more modern hedonistic response theory. Though broadly, this video focuses on the theory of rasa and to a lesser extent bhava, and how the writing and understanding of Sanskrit dramas, specifically using Arthur W. Ryder's translations of Shakuntala and The Little Clay Cart, how both of these plays and the general concepts relate to emotion and relate to theories of audience interaction. As I've said, defining rasa and bhava in one specific way is very nearly impossible. Writers have been arguing about it for centuries, and I am not here to say one way or another what it is. There is no way for me to do that. For the working purposes of this video, we will instead be looking specifically at the Natyasastra and what Bharata had to say on the concept of rasa, as well as a few other modern writers' interpretations, just to sort of pad that definition a bit. As the earliest still existing, even in part, literature on the topic, it is absolutely essential that we base our definition on the Natyasastra itself. Specifically, Bharata defines rasa as, because it is enjoyably tasted, it is called rasa. How does the enjoyment come? Persons who eat prepared food mixed with different condiments and sauces, etc. If they are sensitive, enjoy the different tastes and then feel pleasure, or satisfaction. Likewise, sensitive spectators, after enjoying the various emotions expressed by the actors through words, gestures, and feelings, feel pleasure, etc. This final feeling by the spectators is here explained as various rasas of natya. For clarity here, natya generally can be translated to acting or the concept of acting. At first glance, this definition is a little bit obtuse. All existing literature on the topic will agree there. It's a little bit hard to work out exactly what he's saying, specifically when coming from a Western audience. Still, it is worth examining Bharata's writing a little bit more closely. The central concept is that there is a level of pleasure in the act of viewing theater and the process of theater. I think that is a concept which is undeniable on an anecdotal level, and as we will see, is undeniable on a theoretical level as well. A similar theory to this one, as mentioned in the introduction, is from one of Bharata's contemporaries, perhaps not in time or location, but in the aesthetic of importance of what he had to say. Specifically here, I am referring to Aristotle. Aristotle's catharsis theory was part of his main pillars of tragedy and his main ways of understanding tragedy and the tragic structure of a play. Specifically, the concept was that catharsis was a way for audiences to engage with a work, and that by feeling the full spectrum of emotions invoked by the work, then the audience would be getting the most out of it. In fact, Aristotle explicitly references pleasure in this experience, which has clear connections to the way in which Bharata was also writing. Both of these men came to the conclusion that there is a pleasurable level of the experience that is feeling the full spectrum of emotion as a result of a theatrical production. The end or final cause of tragedy is the pleasure given by imitation. This is a sum up of Aristotle's catharsis theory, given in the text Theater, Theory, Theater. Once again, we can see specifically the word pleasure there. There is the very clear idea that this is a pleasurable experience. This is something that we are also going to see when we get to hedonistic response theory, though I will leave that till the end of the video. While Aristotle limited his definition to tragic works, the Natyasastra is not so restrictive. Instead, mainly due to the build of Sanskrit dramas themselves, Bharata believed that rasas could be felt as a result of all types of theater, that different emotions could be invoked. Specifically, Bharata identified 4 basic rasas, which could then be further broken down into 8 more specific rasas. The 4 basic rasas are erotic, heroic, terror, and disgust. And the 8 more specific rasas are love, humor, grief, anger, heroic, fear, disgust, and surprise. Obviously, that is more than just the pleasurable feeling given when you experience a lot of emotion as a result of watching a tragic work. Bharata then goes on to systemically describe the common ways in which these rasas are invoked by actors. Specifically, he gets into specific vocal tones, bodily movements, costuming, as well as the sorts of characters that would frequently express different sorts of rasa. For example, there's a difference between the type of love that a hapless young courtesan would feel versus the antagonist of a play feeling a sort of toxic love for one of the characters. This is a specific example which will come back later. Within the details that he gives, he specifically mentions crying, laughing, rolling the eyes, as well as using makeup to make the eyes stand out. He is incredibly specific as to how actors are meant to be expressing emotion. Also important to the understanding of rasa is the understanding of bhava. And seeing as the two go hand in hand, though it is important to note that they are not symbiotic. Instead, rasa is produced from bhava and not vice versa. That is to say that the experience of a rasa comes from bhava, comes from the bhava associated with said rasa. Getting more specific into the 5 verses on bhava, Bharata wrote, "Theater producers say that a bhava is called as such because it leads to a rasa arising out of various kinds of acting. Many materials of different kinds produce a distinctive flavor. Likewise, a flavor is produced by the bhava through acting. There is no rasa, flavor, without a bhava, and there is no bhava without rasa. Through acting, mutually, they lead to a distinct result. Condiments and herbs, i.e. vegetables, render food tasty, so did the mutual relation between bhavas and rasas. Out of a seed grows a tree, out of a tree a flower, out of a flower a fruit. So rasa is the seed of all, bhavas of the spectators." So that is a lot of information. Specifically, while clearly we can tell that rasas and bhavas exist together, or more specifically that they cannot exist on their own, there's also the notion that a bhava is what renders a rasa what it is. This idea is specifically supported by the 3rd verse, which likens bhavas to the vegetables which create the flavor of rasa. Although it is important to note that there is a contradictory notion in verse 5, though it could be argued that Bharata is saying that rasas, as performed by the actors in a work, create the bhavas in the audience, and that they are forced to act in accordance with their emotions by laughing, crying, etc. The most important part of bhava to understand is that it is the result of a chain reaction of rasas and bhavas between the actors on stage and the audience perceiving a work. If we can accept that a bhava is a method of acting, or that one can act out a certain bhava, then it becomes clear the linear relationship between the two. Still, that isn't the full story, as other authors have written on rasa and expanded and clarified its central concept. Over the hundreds of years since the writing and later rediscovering of the Natyasastra, many writers have written on what exactly Bharata was talking about and how to best apply his theories to Indian theater. Specifically, I want to talk about modern interpretations of his text. In Rasa, Abhinavagupta, on the purposes of art, a specific standout quote: "The Rasa experience as a transformative practice involving both a beatific pleasure and an ethical one, which ultimately represents nothing but two aspects of the same sentimental, educative, emotional arousal." Specifically, this is getting at the idea that we are meant to learn something through how we experience emotions, and that by engaging with the full spectrum of emotion through a theatrical piece, not only are we being educated in the feeling of emotion, but we are being educated with how to deal with our feelings, both by watching the actors on stage and by feeling the emotions ourselves and handling them in that moment. This author also brings the experience back to one of pleasure, which is in line with how Bharata describes the creation of theater. It was the gods among them who, led by Mahendra, approached God Brahma and requested him thus: "Please give us something which would not only teach us, but be pleasing to both eyes and ears." It is clear that the Indian definition of theater is one that is both educational as well as aesthetically pleasurable. Conversely is the definition of rasa given by David Manson, which is much more metaphysical and is less concerned with what perhaps the goal of a rasa is, and instead what a rasa is as a broad central concept. Specifically, his view can be summed up by a statement he makes about halfway through the essay: "The play, the actors, and the audience will all disappear, but rasa will remain. So rasa is the real thing. You and I and the actors are unreal." He describes rasa not as a physical or emotional reaction, instead being something closer to a law of the universe. Theater is fake, rasa is real. Rasa is a law of the universe to him. It is his belief that rasa belongs neither to the artwork nor to the person experiencing that artwork. It is a given. While at first glance this does seem to be completely contradictory to the previous views discussed, specifically the one outlined in the Natyasastra, Mason makes it very clear that his theory is explicitly based on the text. Partly because the Natyasastra refuses to locate rasa in the material stuff of art and refuses to identify it with emotion and feeling, it has to think of rasa as immaterial and impersonal, and hence universal. If a play and any rasa experience that accompanies it are to have any substantial meaning, the Natyasastra suggests, they must involve some kind of experience that transcends the subjectivity implicit in material reality. He's basically saying that because we all experience the world differently, and as such cannot all interact with emotion in the same way, then rasa must be something beyond that. This point about the universal nature of rasa can be seen explicitly in the Natyasastra. However, to say that the Natyasastra itself refuses to identify rasa with emotion would be a bit of a misnomer. While rasa cannot be exclusively categorized as emotion, emotion and feelings undeniably play a part in how a rasa is felt and how a rasa is articulated. Perhaps rasa, the actors, and the audience can all coexist. Mason also gets into the idea of rasa as a method of active audience involvement in a production. Rasa acts as a unifying process, not only synthesizing the various elements of a dramatic production, but unifying the self of the spectator as well. This idea of rasa as a unifying force is essential to understanding it. Because rasa is unifying, that is why it is seen in all parts of Indian theater, from the acting to the makeup to the costuming, and even in the texts of the plays themselves. It is universal. First, because the texts that we're about to examine have a bit of a higher barrier of entry and also can't be summed down just to brief quotes. You will instead get to experience the story of Shakuntala through the magic of puppetry. And now, the story of Shakuntala.
Oh, la-di-da-di-da, how nice of a day it is out here in the banks. Ah, it's so beautiful. I only wish I had a husband. Ah. Oh, I'm sure you'll find one someday, Shakuntala. You are but a beautiful maiden.
Oh, well, would you look at that fine creature? I want to marry you.
I don't know about that one.
I do. I want to marry you.
Oh, well, I guess I'm charmed. Yes, okay, sure.
Well, I have to go back to my palace because I am the king. But here, in the meantime, take this ring, and when I see it, I will know that it is you, and then we shall be wed.
Okay, thanks. Oh, Shakuntala, you're gonna be married. Or maybe you already are. It's a little confusing. Yes, I am. Oh, I'm so excited, but very nervous to leave my small hometown and my adoptive father. Speaking of, where is he?
Hello, Shakuntala. There comes a time in a woman's life in which she must leave on a journey to go live with her husband, and that time has come for you. I have always loved you, even though I adopted you and found you just kind of outside somewhere. Just know that you are a good and noble woman. Now go to your husband.
Yay! I go on a mystical journey, but I drop the ring. Oh no. Well, that's fine. There's definitely no reason why my husband would suddenly forget what I look like. That would be insane. Oh, hubby.
Who's this lady? I don't know who that is.
I'm your wife.
No, hey, guards, get this insane woman out of here.
I guess I shall now go and live in the forest for the rest of my days. Sigh.
It's crazy that woman that I met in the woods has never come back to see me. I really did love her, and I spend the rest of my days being sad. It turns out I was cursed in the night to forget her face. But I don't know that, not yet. If only I could find the woman with the ring that I gave her. Hello?
Technically, the ring gets found by a fishmonger who kills me, the fish. And there's a whole scene with a bunch of policemen, but that would require a lot of printing money. So instead, here I am, the fish. I'm going to let you know that the ring fell off while Shakuntala was traveling to you, and it was in my belly. So here's the ring, I guess.
Oh, well, why, thank you. Well, I have the ring, but I still don't have my wife. I guess I'll be sad the rest of my days. Oh, who is this child? What a cute little boy.
My mom says my dad's the king.
Oh. Well, you have the same birthmark as me, but that couldn't be. I don't have a wife that lives here in the middle of the forest. Are you sure about that? Oh, Shakuntala, my wife. Now let us be together forevermore with our small young son that I didn't know existed. And then we all lived happily ever after. Huzzah!
So that is the story of Shakuntala, with some heavy abridgments thrown in. I recommend reading the play yourself if you wish to understand all of the subplots and all of the specific eccentricities of the text. So, how does that connect to Rasa? Rasa is prevalent in the basic text of Indian Sanskrit dramas, which is clear even through what has been lost through translation, because, as mentioned, this is specifically based off of the work of an Englishman coming hundreds of years after, and writing his own personal interpretation. Though Rasa is not spoken in the text by name, we can still see references to the idea of Rasa, either through giving the actors express instructions on how to physically act on stage, or through a character's dialogue, or through vivid descriptions of the emotional appearances of certain characters narrated by other characters. Shakuntala includes all of these sorts of descriptions. In the latter half of the play, during the section in which the king and Shakuntala are finally reunited, the king describes Shakuntala like this: "But her anger is free from coquetry, because she has lived in the forest. See? Her glance is straight, her eyes are flashing red, her speech is harsh, not drawingly well bred. Her whole lip quivers, seems to shake with cold. Her brow has straightened eyebrows arching bold. No, she saw that I was doubtful, and her anger was feigned. Thus, when I refused, I now hard-heartedly, to know of love or secret vow, her eyes grew red, and so, bending her arching brow, she fiercely snapped love's bow." In this line, the king is explicitly describing every aspect of Shakuntala's face, from her lip to her brow. Not only does this give the actor playing Shakuntala a lot of very specific directions to work with, but it also allows for the audience, who perhaps cannot see the intricate expressions of her face, to know exactly how she's feeling, and thus allowing them to take part in the act of rasa, which they might not otherwise be able to. Emotion is a very major consideration in how the characters of Shakuntala are written. It's not to say that the characters are driven fully by emotion, that wouldn't be correct. However, the idea of emotion driving their characters comes up frequently throughout Shakuntala and also the Little Clay Cart. A standout line in Shakuntala comes near the end, when the king is mourning his, at this point, lost love. And a forest nymph, who is a friend to Shakuntala, comes to see him to basically report back to Shakuntala and tell her of his sadness. She comments from a tree, but to him, thoughts are real experiences. This line sums up how we are meant to think of rasa. This line emphasizes the realness of thoughts, or more accurately in this scene, seeing as how this line refers to how Shakuntala's absence physically pains him emotion. It is giving us, without saying the word rasa, the best possible framework to understand rasa through the text. Because in rasa, much like how the king is feeling, thoughts are a real experience, or more specifically, emotion is a real experience. This is the primary component of rasa as argued in David Manson's piece. Rasa, or emotion, is real. To the king in Shakuntala, much like to the audiences watching the story play out, the thoughts and the feelings on stage are very real experiences. They are the point of the action. We are here to understand how people feel. As for the Little Clay Cart, I will once again be giving you a puppet demonstration of the broad plot of the play.
And now, the story of the Little Clay Cart. Though I was once a wealthy merchant, I am now poor, simply due to my giving nature. I have given away all of my money to everyone else in my life, even people on the street. Though I am filled with debt, it does not cause me much sadness, because I am madly in love with the local courtesan.
Hello, I'm the courtesan. I am very low poly for some reason, and I love him as well. However, we cannot be together, at least not currently, due to the horrible man who's in love with me.
Hello. I have a dorky voice, which is how you can tell I'm the bad guy. I'm the brother of the king, and therefore I can get whatever I want, including this courtesan woman. Then, through a series of events, including the merchant having a box and then not having the box, and the courtesan woman convincing a gambler to become a monk. The courtesan finds herself in the same garden as the brother-in-law of the prince. If I can't have you, then no one can. And then he strangles her. However, when pressed, it wasn't me that strangled her. It was that merchant man, obviously. Why would it have been me? And so they all go to court. I swear I didn't kill her. I loved her. I say you did, and my sister's brother happens to be the king. So, Actually, as it turns out, I'm alive, and the monk, who was originally a gambler, who I convinced to stop being a gambler, has nursed me back to health. And so here I am to prove that not only am I not dead, but also that guy's brother-in-law isn't the king anymore. It was a man who was very enamored with the merchant. And so now the merchant has his fortune back. What do you want to do about the horrible man who said that you killed me? I say we show him mercy. Oh, well, that's not what I would have done, but you know what? How noble of you. And then we all lived happily ever after, except for that other guy.
In the beginning, before any of that action, we get a scene with the stage director. Shakuntala has the same detail of a stage director coming out and basically telling the audience about the tale that they're going to hear that day. Specifically, though, in the prologue to the Little Clay Cart, he says this: "I have finished the concert, and I've been practicing so long the pupils of my eyes are dancing, and I'm so hungry that my eyes are crackling like a lotus seed, dried up by the fiercest rays of the sun." As we can see, the idea of physical description goes throughout the entirety of the work, from the prologue up until the very end. Specific to the Little Clay Cart, actually, are a lot of eye-specific descriptions, with the latter half of the play including a recurring line in which a character will reference a specific eye twitching, whether that be the right or the left. This detail comes not from the Natyasastra, but instead from Hindu astrology. Within the symbolism of Hindu astrology, there is a distinct difference in the meaning between the right and the left, an idea that clearly extends to the eye. The right is straightforward, honest, impartial, amiable, compliant, and submissive, and the left is contrary, reverse, crooked, opposite, yet lovely, beautiful, sweet, and charming. Throughout the stage directions and the dialogue of the play, there are many references to the eyes of characters of both sexes, whether that be when the merchant despairs that the judge's left eye looks at him, or when the brother-in-law of the king comments on the honesty of the courtesan's mother, specifically referring to the difference between her eyes and her lips. It is clear that the character's eyes reveal something about them to the characters around them, especially when a specific eye is being referenced. In the play, there is the idea that a woman's right eye twitching is a bad omen, whereas a man's right eye can twitch, which is a good omen, and instead the left eye is the one that must be watched out for, and vice versa. This is also a concept specific to Hindu astrology. In the English version of a Malaysian newspaper, which is headquartered in India, it is believed that the twitching of the left and right eyes have different meanings. For women, a twitching left eye would bring good fortune, while it is not considered auspicious if the right eye twitches. Meanwhile, it is just the opposite in the case of men. Not only does this eye twitching represent a good or ill omen, the newspaper makes it very clear that this is referencing big events, like the meeting of a spouse or a sudden illness. In the Little Clay Cart, eye twitches are a major part of foreshadowing in the story, with no less than 5 specific mentions of eyes twitching. This play is filled to the brim with verbal decor and in-dialogue references to bodily movements, from the less emotionally driven, like bowing, or lines that mention the emotion of the character in the same line as the physical description. A friend to one whom women ever see, with eyes half closed in apprehension stress. There is a clear connection with how a character is feeling and how an actor is meant to represent that emotion, which is directly related to Bharata's descriptions in the Natyasastra. Through study of this play and through study of Shakuntala, though the two plays were likely written about 100 years apart, it can be concluded that the Natyasastra as a whole and Rasa is a unifying concept throughout Sanskrit dramas. These two plays, while they do have their aesthetic similarities, are very different works. One being mainly focused on royalty and gods, and the other one being focused on the humble tale of a merchant and a courtesan. To that point, falling in line with the Natyasastra is what defines a play in this part of the world in this era and beyond. Today, we define the goodness of a work of theater in many different ways, though mainly through how a piece contributes to the furthering of the craft of theater, or how many tickets a particular production is able to sell. Rasa represents a very clear alternative to these theories. Instead, it proposes that the success of a work of theater is how someone feels about it, and the depth of feeling in which it is capable of creating in its audience. This relates to more modern theories of audience interaction with plays, more specifically hedonistic response theory. In the audience experience, measuring quality in the performing arts, Brat Tvam references hedonistic response theory like this. Santoro and Torillo, drawing on the work of Lacher and Mussorgsky, define the hedonistic response as a combined response from emotions, senses, imagination, and intellect, and argue that the consumers expect hedonic products and services to create an absorbing experience, arousing their emotions, stimulating a physical reaction, soliciting their memories and fantasies, and triggering their cognitive development. This is, in essence, the exact same idea as rasa. Not only is it arguing that audience goers expect the emotion, but also that they expect to feel a sort of intellectual pleasure as well. They go to the theater both to learn and to feel. This is a through line from the theories of Aristotle and the theories of Bharata all the way to the modern day. It shows that not only is rasa and theories like it instrumental to the formation and the current state of Indian theater, but also we can apply that exact same idea to Western theater. Rasa, the word may be untranslatable. The concept clearly is not. It is clear theater is meant to invoke an emotional reaction, and is generally an emotional experience for all members of a production, from the audiences watching the show to the actors on stage, all the way back to the playwright who wrote the play. In short, rasa, or the experience that rasa describes, is ubiquitous and ever constant. It exists as a manifestation of all aspects of theater and what theater is meant to do.